Once the tourists are gone, Kamado asks if I truly love Pokemon. I mean, yeah, I think so. The games are pretty flawed and the characters don't even play their flutes correctly, but I keep coming back, right? I'm always excited to discuss it when the opportunity arises. When the Pokemon IP expands out into new territory, I'm taking the plunge with it. I want Pokemon to be better, and isn't that the kind of sentiment you feel towards something you love? Eventually, I realized Kamado meant the species, and we still have 6 chapters to go, so let's save the waterworks for Polina. I take on a few newcomers' requests en route to Kamado's office. Surely none of these will cause significant distress later. PLA is savvy to enrich Jubilife Village rather than developing more cities. Aside from protecting Hisui's natural habitat, it fosters a tight-knit, ever-expanding community, exactly what Pokemon does best. With the wind in our sails, we wave goodbye to the bustling streets of Jubilife. Out into the open expanse of nothing. The Cobalt Coastlands is perhaps PLA's most linear area due to the encroaching shoreline, forcing the player to beachcomb in one of 2 directions. Before that though, we battle Irida's Glaceon, who's made an unsanctioned alliance with a feral Eevee. This impromptu double-teaming is PLA's idea of balancing, giving your opponents an unfair and unfun advantage. If your Pokemon dies or misses a move, the rest of your prospective turns are skipped, allowing opponents to chain kill your entire team. Pokemon battles are best when even the direst scenarios are surmountable, whereas this quirk turns some battles into predetermined cutscenes. Irida solemnly divulges the Warden Polina's story. She's failing to raise a replacement for her late noble, and the Pearl Clan is losing faith in her. We're sent to meet her at Veilstone Cape. The Cobalt Coastlands is Hisui's furthest corner, and it reads like a proudly uncharted area. Some inhabitants are curious about your arrival, most notably Sfeel, who gleefully roll around you to show support. This is perfect, and Sfeel is perfect. Others take flight upon seeing you, notably Glameow. However, the Alpha Drapion and its Skorupi henchmen reject your Manifest Destiny bullshit, assuring their home isn't for the taking. The wide behavioral variety informs the Coastlands' novel tone, though the well-composed yet unjustly triumphant Cobalt Coastlands 1-1 squashes it a bit, especially with tragedy looming. Circumnavigating the Drapion leads to the Grassy Trail, which focuses on a wide variety of Pokemon and biomes, and challenging it leads to the Beach Trail, which focuses on killing you. It's a cleverly integrated risk-reward system, drawing on your playstyle and natural topography. They even split further into the elevated, mandatory Veilstone Cape and challenging Castaway Shore, but instead of Turtwig, your reward is a huge, land-faring, viscerally terrifying octopus. These 3 paths are great, but the snag is the non-existence of every other path. Weirdeer can't swim, so PLA's excellent exploration falls by the wayside, taking much of the game's appeal with it. I lucked into another distortion, but the scarcity of open land forced an awkward spawn location on top of the Alpha Drapion. Distortions frequently spawn over fixed alphas, and I don't know why. They disappear when it forms anyway. An NPC at Ginkgo Landing gives you 3 feather balls to catch a flying Pokemon, and I catch the nearby Staraptor in 1. Flying Pokemon, as in Pokemon that fly, not flying type Pokemon, seem like a natural fit for Hisui, adding another layer of interactability and gameplay variety. The interactability angle is DOA. Flying Pokemon exhibit no behaviors beyond C/2π and a proficiency in PowerPoint. Seeing wild Pokemon in such a pathetically stripped-down state is distractingly artificial. The gameplay variety fares better. Their predictability makes capturing them a precision and timing-based minigame, supported by the near-linear trajectory of feather balls. They round out a satisfyingly symmetrical triumvirate of Pokeball types. Heavy balls for close distance, feather balls for long distance, and Pokeballs for boring. Feather balls' only stumbling point are their comparative simplicity and triviality. Much like Balloon Race, flying Pokémon succeed because they stimulate different cognitive faculties than regular gameplay, but they fail to clearly distinguish between the video game artifice and the immersive world. My own Staravia evolved into Staraptor like 30 seconds after this, so it was worthless anyway. To break up the coastland's tonal desolation, PLA lets us chase around Aipom for a while. PLA makes fantastic use of a Pokemon as unassuming as Aipom, characterizing it as a trickster by trade and a little guy at heart. Veilstone Cape is PLA's longest uninterrupted linear stretch, which is unique for good reason. You're ostensibly forced to navigate an Alpha Purugly, possibly a reference to Mars from Diamond and Pearl, sans the fear factor. I tried to catch it, failed, ran away, and faced no consequences. Alphas send out a shock radius upon provocation that forcibly dismounts you, seemingly to prevent players from careening past them, but getting back up and careening away still works great. Fencing you in would bode poorly in an exploration game, but a stronger shock would at least represent alphas better. Likewise, you're not allowed to warp while being targeted, but you're sure allowed to careen. The only way players will interact with alphas is if they're given a reason, with which PLA encourages at least a few interactions per subregion. There's a significant earnings boost for catching alpha Pokemon, a significant XP yield from defeating them, and while their attack and defense boosts disappear upon capture, they're still guaranteed 3 maxed out effort levels. It's a solid balance, all things considered. PLA loves player agency, so Veilstone Cape may seem misguided, but its purpose is symbolic. Once you reach the summit, you're truly isolated. Hisuian Growlithe is a genius design. The fur covering its eyes and the long mane brilliantly represent a Pokemon in mourning, too ashamed or afraid to show its face and too distressed to groom its fur, while remaining absolutely adorable. Polina, standing at the late noble Arcanine's grave, explains his story. He dove into the ocean to save his pup and couldn't make it back to shore. It'd probably be cool of me to critique this, like you can't just kill off the dog and call it deep storytelling, but fuck if it doesn't get to me. PLA doesn't show any death, thankfully. The Coastlands story isn't about loss, it's about life after loss. Arcanine's pup is the smaller of the two Growlithe, the one keeping its distance, looking up at Polina for direction. I really love that. You can sympathize with Polina refusing to force him into lordship until he can better manage his trauma and fear, while understanding the Pearl Clan's stance that the Coastlands needs a noble. You're supposed to circle back and find Iscan to reach Firespit Island, but I'm normal, so I jump off the cliff instead. 2 gargantuan pillars feed off from Veilstone Cape into Lunker's lair, creating a massive landmark any self-respecting player will eagerly explore. For their inquisitiveness, something PLA steadfastly rewards, they get a low-resolution, poorly modeled wasteland with hilariously wrong geometry and nothing of importance. It's an unambiguous and significant failure of the Cobalt Coastlands to contain such an eye-catching landmark, so exclusive that curious players will stop at nothing to explore it and alienate them for doing so. Any acknowledgement or even respect for explorers would make Lunker's Lair special, but it's so woefully unfinished that it actively punishes exploration. Credit where credit is due though, the route to Piplup is so impressively well hidden that I didn't find it. Jumping onto the back wall of Veilstone Cape at its lowest point and following it backwards leads you to Hisuian Growlithe's habitat Windbreak Stand. Following the trail downwards leads to Spring Path, and navigating past the Alpha Mothim leads to Piplup. I'll have to settle for this Unknown I found. Unknown are meant to be found through Unknown notes, making them less of a casual interruption and more of a decisive break from standard gameplay. This distinguishes them from Wisps, furthers PLA's excellent cognitive variety, draws you to interesting locales, and makes finding one organically pretty exciting. Unknown notes make the best of a bad Pokemon by channeling its absurdity into pure gameplay benefit. Of course, only having 28 forms makes them rather deciduous, but more collectibles is more collectibles. Speaking of, I made a montage of my Wisp collecting escapades in the Coastlands. Crossing Slope ups the parallel line ante, being a third path above Ginkgo Landing's established grassy and beach routes. I'm a sucker for novelty, but Ginkgo Landing is probably fine too. They converge at the aptly named Apom Hill, and you know what? PLA deserves to flaunt its good work with Apom. He runs up to you and asks you to chase him. That's adorable. Speaking of adorable, Volo appears to casually deify you and seek out plates. Sucks for him, because I'm the protagonist, so they just materialize into my inventory. Isken lives here and acts as contrast to Polina's tragic loneliness with his voluntary reclusivity. PLA makes clear that Isken's anxiety holds him back, although making Basculegion's warden afraid of ghosts inevitably reads like a bad joke. It's so debilitating that we need to fetch a Dusclops for him to make Basculegion treats. Having us fetch a Dusclops is cromulent, if impertinent mechanically, but both Isken and Basculegion deserve better. You can't convince me this model wasn't made for a shelved cooking system. Could you imagine how that would have worked? PLA abruptly swaps the sandy and grassy paths as hostility levels with Bather's Lagoon and Hideaway Bay. To be fair, the level 50 Alpha Ambipom is probably enough signposting, except that I'm an idiot. Apom is friendly, so Ambipom can't be that bad, right? Well, if they can screw up its design this colossally bad, they can do anything. I spent 10 tedious minutes throwing balls at and running away from this Ambipom. Maybe Overworld Enragement would solve that? Regardless, my stubbornness is rewarded with the beautiful Hideaway Bay and some new Pokemon for my decks, making for a decent exploration reward. After circling back on Hideaway Bay, PLA circles back on player agency by forcing the Coastlands camp request upon you. The positioning is clever. Dusclops is only found at night, and completing this request lets you skip to night without a major detour, but this could have been left as an optional bonus. I reached it at sunset and opted to bide my time exploring the area instead. The shores of Deadwood Haunt are littered with beached shipwrecks which explain the dead, wood, and haunt parts of the name, alongside beached cargo crates that I learned embarrassingly recently are full of useful late-game materials. It's not particularly subtle world building, but it increases the implied tension without overtuning the danger. The shoreline is also in the shape of a giant withered hand, which itself resembles Dusclops' evolutionary item, the Reaper Cloth. Neat. The seemingly insignificant Dusclops fetch quest becomes an impromptu turning point when your starter fully evolves during it, at least in my case. Each starter has a Hisuian final form, which PLA wisely keeps secret until you've seen a few Hisuian forms. It's still certainly a shock, but it's concentrated. Your Pokemon acclimating to Hisui through your adventure is a compelling concept and a great exhibition of your shared growth. Hisuian Typhlosion has an admittedly stupid expression and weird shape language. Bulbapedia says Hisuian Typhlosion may be inspired by Psychopomps, mythological ferrymen said to guide souls into the afterlife. While this personally irks me because I also designed a Psychopomp Pokemon, I must admit that it's an excellent basis for a Pokemon design, and anyone who thought of that must be extremely good at making 7-hour video essays. It's probably going to be 8. Whatever. Its expression, shape language, and unnatural anthropomorphization bog it down, but its fan-favorite typing of Fire Ghost works in its favor. I don't know that I'd take the Wispy Flame over Jotonian Typhlosion's inimitable Spiky one, but it works as a switch-up. I'm not enthusiastic for Hisuian Typhlosion, but I respect its approach and certainly grew to love mine. Hisuian Decidueye and Samurott are in similar camps, although the choice to make Samurott even less similar to Oshawott is certainly contendable, but the designs are fantastic and they don't attempt to outshine the originals, instead reimagining them for Hisuia's environment. The quest itself isn't worth mentioning, but this will never not be funny. Get ready for a 3-act mime show, folks. After a surprisingly cool Dark Pulse animation from Dusclops somehow cooks Basculegion's food, we meet Isken and Polina at Ginkgo Landing and learn that they're secretly in a relationship. I can't help but like this, that love can blossom even in such a lonely world, even if they have no chemistry. Isken's cowardice is so monolithic that I don't buy that he saved Polina, and I don't buy that Polina likes him. Any nuance would work wonders here. We're introduced to the seafaring mount, Basculegion. Yeah, wow, it's not flattering. That mom mustache, sickly green body, and literal circles popping out of its tail don't give a great impression. I broadly like Basculegion as a concept, but that's a face only a mother could love. Why does it have a goatee? And why is it floating? The rest of this cutscene is par for the course, as in I've already moaned about it. The Misfortune Sisters show up with the same dialogue as before. Is that a Team Rocket reference? And steal Growlithe for no reason. They want strong Pokemon to fend for them, but isn't the whole point that these Growlithe are weak? And why can't I battle them? And why do we need another motivation to go to Firespit Island? Did the story forget that the story was happening? We were already making for Firespit Island, and the plot beat this sets up is not worth the contrivance. Regardless, we have Basculegion, and the Coastlands' landfaring linearity finally gives way to a vast, sprawling ocean. Let's start with the mechanics. Basculegion can jump, and jump again. Gotta say, great start. I like jumping again. The newfound freedom it provides is certainly necessary in open water. Basculegion can also dash, thank God. The game even slows down while you're aiming a Pokeball in the air, which would be super considerate if it ever fucking worked. Like, it's insane, it literally never works. You can target a swimming Pokemon directly beneath you, throw a Pokeball, and miss. Water traversal is rife with massive particles and textures that make some Pokemon impossible to see until they're already mad at you. The controls are equally garbage. You'll want to hold B in the air to preserve momentum upon landing, alongside holding Y for a higher jump, alongside ZR to aim and ZL to target. Time needed to stay slow while the Pokeball was moving so Pokemon couldn't just swim forward an inch and kill you. Mantine and Mantike are the only sufferable catches here, since they're passive and fly above the water. Even when my Pokeball lands square on a Remoraide's head, it frequently just bounces off with no warning. Catching Pokemon in the water is an infuriating mess. Traversing the water though? Get a load of this. If you double jump just before hitting the water, you get a unique animation and your jump back. You can theoretically chain these jumps forever. I honestly don't know if it's optimal, but you're gonna need a time waster as hypnotically addictive as this to substantiate the Coastlands' vast, empty seascape. Whereas land can be delicately sculpted to maximize complexity, water is entropic and featureless. The mechanical variety has to pull the weight, and playing skip rope with my dead fish just isn't cutting it, and God forbid I try to catch Pokemon. So, naturally, I wander, and I find virtually nothing. The Coastlands is lonelier than ever. There's no diving, no stealth, no gameplay variety, and no fights. Even the Misfortunes twiddle their thumbs until you wash ashore somewhere. It feels even less interactive than the linear shore it emerges from. It's comparing 2 or 3 lines to, in effect, none. Venturing far enough into the Coastlands greets you with a world border. Your character stops, the screen fogs, and the game overlays the message, you cannot go any farther. The fog only appears once you've already nudged the world border, Truman Show style, thus completely failing to mystify the barren world beyond. Any game with segmented areas in a larger world needs world borders, but PLA makes no attempt to contextualize them. It's like it's telling you, point blank, that it's got nothing. Most of PLA's world borders are steep inclines with an invisible wall as a failsafe, making for some canny valleys. Sorry. The entrance point simply warps you back to Jubilife, pretty standard fare for video games. The Coastlands forgo any physical roadblocks, presumably to sell the openness of the ocean, inadvertently spotlighting the facade of openness instead. You can even reach the corners. There should not be corners. I'm willing to forgive a world border, but I can't forgive this implementation. It feels like time to return to Jubilife and refamiliarize myself with society. Just in time for my promotion. I get to use lead-in balls now. They're like heavy balls, but heavier. Cool. The variety of appearances at the hair salon eclipses God's pathetic 8 options and expands further with associated requests or story progression, notably completing Arizu's Mirelands arc. I've made you stare at boring white boy McGee for entirely too long already, so it's time for a makeover. Arizu called me a slur. The hairdresser currently offers 7 styles, none of which are particularly appealing, and all of which are inexplicably gender-locked. I shouldn't need to tell you this is flat out bad. PLA doesn't have the resources nor the reasons to gate content like this. The hairdresser opens with 5 options. You can unlock more through progression and requests, but those are gender-locked too. Survey Corps style is female exclusive with no male counterpart, giving me less options for a choice I made hours ago. It's a bizarre, archaic, and pointless design choice. In contrast, Anth's clothier is staggeringly comprehensive. The default options already trounce Irizu's final lineup with further unlockables for everything from conducting research to random requests to mystery gifts. Oh right, mystery gifts. There were none active during my recording, but they're either cute novelties like a shiny Zorua hat, or clearly for money like a 30 Heavy Ball digital download bonus or a 50 nugget code in a strategy guide. Anth's most unique inventory is the Pokemon-themed attire, and this Lilligant top is somehow among the least ridiculous. I get that Pokemon merchandise is like half the brand, but selling kimonos styled from Pokemon which have mauled militias in recent memory seems insensitive. Articles themselves are well designed and modeled, even if colors aren't always subtle enough to be cross-compatible, and shout out to the considerate inclusion of color contacts. Overall, the character customizers are, ordered best to worst, Anth, Irizu, Arceus. Should have called the game Pokemon Legends Anth, really. You can show off your makeover in the adjacent photo booth if you're not me. My perspective as a practicing cryptid will be pretty limited here, but there's an impressive amount of poses and customization options. Not everything looks fantastic, but I'm no fashionista, and I found a few that suit me. Posing with your Pokemon is where the booth shines. Their poses seem to be recycled battle animations, and that's perfect. Recycling work is exactly what I criticized the hairdresser for not doing, except every option is amazing. Crime manipulations are also utilized well here, and PLA's Pokemon models are positively gorgeous. Look how happy she is! Again, you unlock more customization via requests or story progression, which makes much more sense for lens filters than for a decent hairstyle. Location-based backdrops would have been cooler though. The general store is almost entirely outshined by the numerous ungeneral stores, since every general item is craftable, and most of its wares are locked behind story progression and bribes. Store manager Tao Hua orders new wares upon receiving a specific item from each subregion, which is a decent if lengthy excuse to scale wares to story progression. I rarely engage with the storefront, but the general store outposts at each base camp begrudgingly warrant engaging with the requests. Just across the street is Ginkgo Guild traveling merchant Tuli, the grocer to choice fast food employee, selling crafting materials at low prices with early availability. Don't mind the old man, by the way. I think PLA wants Ginter to be useful, but he's essentially a snake oil salesman who sells everything from useless junk to industrial dishwashers under the wrong names for the wrong prices. Think Red from Animal Crossing, a flaky, deceitful scumbag who incidentally owns the Mona Lisa. He originally sold one item at a time, but a patch thankfully expanded his pockets to a still pathetic but glance-worthy 3 items. Tuli only sells the ingredients for healing items, so Anvin picks up the Pokeball scraps with his even less general store. This feels like a remnant from before the crafting kit, when the Craftworks served any purpose, although it does find a legitimate niche in selling crafting recipes. These range from fringe to useless, but you can get serious mileage out of a few with expertise and patience. Side note, PLA occasionally implies that everyone crafts items differently, which isn't conveyed in the game design. That's not really a complaint, just something I noticed. The Craftworks are, if nothing else, a flavorful addition to Jubilife and one more familiar face. Beyond the main street lies the Folk Shrine, a bizarre and understated locale where charms can be purchased. Charms are one-time exemptions from status afflictions, overworld damage, or item drops upon fainting, depending on type. Each of the 3 charm types has 5 increasingly expensive variants, although never to an unreasonable extent. You can certainly get by without these and have an extra inventory slot to spare. You're not rushing to replace them when they're used up, but they're a worthy strategic dimension to offer. PLA rather conscientiously recycles the Ursaluna scent-sniffing mechanic from the Mirelands plot for a series of missing person requests. They're still heavily scripted and not exactly thrillers mechanically, but I much prefer this to never acknowledging that mechanic again. They took the time to program it, might as well exhaust the idea and make a fun side story of it. Floro Main Street is overflowing with interactables, from an incredibly modest XP candy shop to Beauregard, who I somehow forgot to give a Wurmple earlier. Actually, I haven't done any Jubilife requests, so let's start by ransacking every house in the village. Another bonus of this tight-knit community is that barging into people's homes scans surprisingly okay. This guy near the pastures evaluates your friendship with any of your Pokemon. NPCs like this, whose existences are purely mechanical, are best kept to a minimum. They're basically menus with faces. Friendship could have been indicated in the stats screen, but Bellamy here isn't like a systemic issue. I fully phased through this person somehow. Add that one to the glitch bible. The guard at Jubilife's Prelude Beach entrance sets off the infamous Big Weasel request. Basically, Pokemon heights and weights vary within their species. Weasel can be 110 to 29, Dorian's is 28, and good luck. It's incongruously difficult among PLA's requests, and yet this kind of petty, my dad could beat up your dad playground squabble is integral to Pokemon. The fact that height doesn't matter is key. It captures the intense admiration, jealousy, and competitiveness of childhood with a stock NPC and minimal work. What is a community without some push and pull, you know? What are requests if they're all effortless? Dorian is an icon because he has a big weasel and you don't. In a pinch, you can submit an alpha, which his dialogue even acknowledges. It feels like cheese, but PLA is happy to let you outsmart the requests with outside-the-box solutions as long as you're having fun. Oh yeah, this request isn't fun at all, which just makes it more effective. The cherry on top is seeing your tall Buizel and the guard's little Buizel bob in unison. It's adorable and takes this request from the platonic ideal of a Pokemon Have Heights tutorial request to one of PLA's best. Talking to this guy along Canela Avenue sets up target practice, a balloon race stand-in that occupies the catching tutorial arena near Prelude Beach. Instead of weirdeering through the balloons, now you throw Pokeballs at them, earning points and adding seconds to the clock for chain hits and sniping shinies. The hitboxes are ambiguous, and the premise doesn't totally map onto PLA's mechanics. You'll probably want motion sensitivity turned up, which is probably why my score fluctuated by tens of thousands of points between rounds. Or maybe I'm trash. Alas. Despite my frustrations, having a minigame available in Hisui's hub world is still valuable as a brain break and a thoughtful reuse of real estate. I'm not personally willing to stick it out, but I'll let the balloon masochists have their fun. Ever wanted a farming sim inside your Pokemon game? Well, if you give some money to Colza and fuck off, he'll do it for you. Crops grow when you catch a certain amount of Pokemon, which you aren't told but are probably doing anyway. You can randomly receive bumper crops or conscript your Pokemon to unlock more harvest types if they fit certain requirements. I'm not here to tell you the farm is worthless. You can semi-automate the apricorn harvest to reduce some late game monotony, and it's the only repeatable way to obtain mints. It's just hard to care when there's no gameplay involved. A more involved system might veer into uncharted genre territory and alienate some fans, but the Venn diagram of Pokemon fans and farming sim fans is as circular as a Staraptor's trajectory. As is, it's basically a storefront with extra steps. The village pastures are a Pokemon storage system that draws on the presence of a hub world to actually make sense in universe. About a half dozen random Pokemon from your box can be seen grazing per visit, not interactable but still behaving roughly as wild Pokemon do, heavy on the roughly. It's always a little uncanny to see just a handful of the hundreds in your pastures, particularly since the UI implies there are multiple, but there's nothing to be done about that. I like this system, as silly as it is seeing literal gods constrained by a wood fence, and I'm glad they didn't just finagle a Pokemon box into your smartphone. You need that separation so you can't tag your Pokemon out when they faint. It's hard to overstate how much of Jubilife Village's charm lives in its music. It might genuinely be my favorite piece in the game. It portrays a safe, welcoming hometown in a thankless world so authentically that it feels fully diegetic. It opens with an iconic rising melody, instilling hope and lifting spirits, a motif which persists throughout. Its steady introduction of new instruments gives you time to familiarize and sink your teeth into each. It's played in a lovely rubato 6/8, but it holds a pause one beat longer on the first few repeats. It's hard to explain why I love this so much. It feels lived in, custom fit, tender. The arrangement varies slightly based on your location, from outside the village to inside your quarters, and the delicate balance and versatility ensure that every rendition is amazing. There's no one primary instrument, but the flute sets the tone beautifully, and the sparse percussion serves as an excellent through line. I can't sing my praises loud enough for this thing. I'm getting nostalgic just mentioning it. Aside from Silene's office and Leventon's blackboard, the Galaxy Hall's scale is mostly for show, with most of its doors either locked or open to empty rooms. That's not inherently an issue. I'd rather PLA let me fill in the gaps than shoehorn a dozen Bellamy's into here, but exactly one door can be opened, and it's the door to the most strictly supervised area in the building, Komodo's office. This is the only route to the balcony, its spectacular view of Jubilife, and unknown W. Regardless, I appreciate its elusivity, and its appearance in a later cutscene makes it hard to miss forever. Wisps also exist in Jubilife, albeit decisively less well hidden. I actually like that. You wouldn't know whether Jubilife even had wisps until you saw one, and it's a good use of the space. Jubilife Village, being Hisui's only industrial settlement, essentially has to offer every service you'll ever need in a 6-building commercial district. The burst of community is necessary to balance out Hisui's vast isolation, but you can only fake an ecosystem for so long. Eventually, you need real interaction. Pokémon is a social franchise, which is owed entirely to the iniquities of Pokémon collection. Dorian's Buizel is proof. It's human nature to want the tallest Buizel, the strongest Pokémon, or the in-group info on how to get Mew. Pokémon would be nowhere if not for its innate power to spark friendships. So how can a Pokémon game even work when it takes all that away? Just beyond Florero Main Street, a tiny trading post serves as PLA's one-stop shop for internet connectivity. That already doesn't bode well for its extent, but before delving into it, it's important to acknowledge that this is a post-2018 Switch game, so all online functionality is locked behind a monthly paywall for each account. This playthrough was done on an alternate account without Nintendo Switch Online, so I'll occasionally cut to footage from my main account for demonstration. Thanks to this restriction though, I can deconstruct both online and offline playstyles from experience. Thanks, Nintendo! Anyway, online connectivity is manually toggled, so scratch that. The main online functionality is trading, with options for both local and online, both obvious prerequisites in a post-NSO world. Beyond that, trading is about as stripped down as possible. Pairing is done through access codes, all trades must be 1-for-1, and the gameplay boils down to 2-player menu navigation. Despite that, trading is incredibly rewarding both socially and mechanically. If your friend can't be fucked collecting 108 wisps for Spiritomb, you can hop on call, maybe get something valuable of theirs, and walk away with a mutual interaction and benefit. One's trash is another's treasure, after all. Everyone plays Pokemon for different reasons, and trading lets both parties align better with theirs. It's absolutely vital to Pokemon. But is it fun? No, I don't think so. It's purely transactional, and the game is fully functioning without it. Traditionally, some Pokemon have evolved through trade though, so PLA has a pivotal choice to make: lean on the status quo and make trading mandatory to complete the Pokédex, or do some major retconning. PLA does both, and neither. The linking cord, purchasable through the trading post, is an evolutionary item that works on Pokemon originally evolved by trade, and Pokemon which evolved by trade while holding an item now just need the item. Without those retcons, my Graveler would never become a Golem, and Laventon's dream of a completed Pokédex would remain unfulfilled forever. It still leans on the status quo in its design. It's clearly shorthand for a trade evolution with its resemblance to the link cable, but without nuking the game. I mean, trade evolutions never made sense, and the linking cord is hilariously anachronistic, but PLA makes the best of a bad situation. It also undermines the bond between trainers and Pokemon, but what doesn't? PLA expects you to know Pokemon's history, which is why I mention it, but really, the old ways are irrelevant to this game's quality. I wrote and cut a lengthy, scathing rant about trade evolutions because it wasn't productive criticism. As far as I'm concerned, nothing important should be gated behind other people or subscription services, so this is the bare minimum. So how do you buy it? With merit points, which you get from collecting satchels. When you die, you drop a huge chunk of your items, and your satchel appears in someone else's world. They can then track it down and return it to you, getting you your items back and netting them up to 100 merit points. You see the catch-22, right? If merit points and therefore linking cords are only attainable through use of a different online functionality, you're just kicking the problem down the curb. If anything, you're making it worse, since local trades don't require NSO. Thankfully, your world will populate with NPC satchels if you're not connected to the internet, and you can technically find linking cords either in Ginter's stock or in Spacetime Distortions. In short, I love trading, and I love even more that it's almost entirely useless. And that's it for PLA's online functionality. Pokemon Home compatibility was added 4 months after release, yikes, but an analysis of that would fit better in a Pokemon Home review, so it's not my problem. Online battles, practically a tentpole of the franchise, are conspicuously missing. It's true that battling isn't a top priority for PLA, but entire swaths of the Pokemon community are born from and dedicated to the intricacies of the battle system. Battling and trading are two sides of the same coin, one cooperative, one competitive. PLA clearly cares about both, see the Buizel quest, and this was a major missed opportunity to substantiate that. I personally never got into online battles, the competitive scene is beyond me, and casual matches are pretty limp. There are remedies for both of those though, and PLA chooses neither. Overall, PLA's online functionality doesn't clear the bar. No attempt was made to integrate it faithfully into PLA's historical setting, and it fails to offer even the basics. PLA gets away with bucking a lot of auxiliary mechanics in favor of its core loop, but a robust online system could have been half of the game. Instead, it's hardly any. Exiting and re-entering your request tab unsorts all of the requests, while still claiming that they're sorted. That's a minor gripe, but it really gets on my nerves on long request sessions. I returned to the Obsidian Fieldlands to check out the Lost Satchel system and use the excursion to take on perhaps PLA's most famous request, a peculiar Ponyta. An NPC mentions seeing a discolored Ponyta in the Fieldlands, and you know where this is going. PLA has some serious guts to go for this, especially this early. Using Ponyta for this is pure genius. It's a low-level encounter in the vast Horseshoe Plains, allowing for a long, uninterrupted, suitably suspenseful walk-up which distills the magic of a real shiny encounter. Oh, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It also provides nice contrast with Galarian Ponyta, which Yota points out. Even knowing this was a scripted and unmissable encounter, my heart was racing here, even more so on first playthrough. It teaches players to seek the thrill of the chase, like a gacha game guaranteeing high-level rewards to new players to incite debilitating gambling addictions in 8-year-olds. Thankfully, shiny Ponyta aren't purchasable, so I don't have to bludgeon anyone with hammers just yet, Niantic. Don't get me started on TCG. It also shows players the bold, unmistakable shiny sparkle and the nice, somewhat mistakable jingle that triggers at close distance. Without the visual and auditory reinforcement, shinies would be completely DOA. This is because, bizarrely, some shinies are nearly indistinguishable, not to mention the accessibility disaster for hard of hearing or colorblind folks such as myself. Nobody should be driven to thoroughly inspect every single Pokemon in Hisui, lest they bear the profound deflation and social humiliation of failing a shiny. Even with multiple cues, I've still lost shinies in particle effects or strange geometry. Is that a skill issue? Maybe, but shinies must be failable to be meaningful, so PLA doesn't force you to find it. However, it wisely concentrates most of the risk into the catch. PLA knew it had to get shinies right, so it did. Shinies are perhaps PLA's most potent force for social interaction. They're predicated entirely on bragging rights, the best possible reward in Pokemon. The majority of my PLA-related interactions are discussions about our favorite shinies, our longest hunts, our luckiest finds, etc. Through leaning all the way into this pseudo-interactive byproduct of the shiny system, PLA paves its own social avenue, detached from NSO memberships or even the game's mechanics. Alongside its competitive scene, Pokemon has a bustling shiny hunting scene, which PLA desperately wants you to convert to. By commercializing the magic of shiny hunting, PLA earns itself nearly infinite replay value with almost zero added work. Even beyond the various shining hunting methods, you can search for shiny alphas, shinies from distortions, shinies with certain heights or weights, shinies found at full odds, on and on forever. It pairs with PLA's themes of exploration and discovery, since in-universe you're genuinely searching for and documenting rare specimens. And if you remember the Eevee catch from a few hours ago, you can imagine how intense catching shinies is. On the other hand, hunting for shinies is basically rolling a die several thousand times, so PLA offers a designated hunting method, the mass outbreak. The notion of investigating Pokemon outbreaks alludes to intriguing ecological concepts like overpopulation and invasive Pokemon species, but in practice it's purely mechanical and video gamey. Represented by a map icon and noted by the guardsman Res, outbreaks spawn 10 to 15 of a given Pokemon with increased shiny odds, although only 5 can be spawned concurrently, thoroughly failing to simulate naturally occurring outbreaks. I got Hippopotas and Eevee outbreaks back to back, and despite their incomparable temperaments, both amassed exactly 10 identically behaving Pokemon. I don't think Eevee even spawns here. That artificiality, however, works wonders for the player experience. The concurrent cap of 5 seems like a performance concession, but it's subtly genius. It allows players the thrill of a shiny Pokemon spawning before their eyes. Like pulling cards from a TCG pack, except not evil. Likewise, the total cap of 10 to 15 jives with the 10 Pokemon caught research bonus to provide incentive for seeing outbreaks through. Honestly, shiny hunting is inherently incompatible with the illusion of Pokemon as living creatures anyway. Every encounter is a data point, every method is a probabilistic equation. That's not a critique on the players, that's just how Pokemon interacts with this playstyle. Despite PLA's efforts, a significant sum of players will attempt shiny hunting, balk at the monotony or inauthenticity, and walk away, and PLA can do nothing but let them. Mass outbreaks, in an attempt to accommodate shiny hunters, lean into the artifice and encourage consistent, enumerable strategies. Find or create some nearby cover, press ZL, press ZR, release ZR, release ZL. Think about it. If PLA successfully convinces every player to shiny hunt, then mass outbreaks become the single most exercised feature in the game, so it's banking hard on their replayability. I'd say they succeeded. It clears the bar for shiny hunting methods. Novel enough to be perennially fun, rote enough to be endlessly repeated. It's pushing that second requirement. You probably couldn't watch a movie while hunting, for example, but you could be on call with friends, listen to music or podcasts, or just send it and it'd still be palatable. The typical bait and catch method is thankfully outshined by catching the entire horde in rapid succession, a much more frenetic and satisfying experience, although stealth is sometimes prudent with skittish or low catch rate Pokemon. The fun falters when Pokemon get aggravated. The sheer quantity makes every option either unfun or unfeasible besides retreating and starting over, at least until you reach critical mass on spoiled apricorns, and beside maybe expediting some research tasks, outbreaks are essentially married to shiny hunting. And I'd be remiss not to mention its biggest flaw. Return to Jubilife is the second option. There's a 20% mass outbreak spawn chance in each subregion, equating to, at best, a 67% chance overall. For every missed or unwanted outbreak, you have to enter an area, talk to Laventon, and choose the second option. Those fractions of seconds add up to hours wasted for devoted or absent-minded players. Ultimately, mass outbreaks are sufficient time wasters, easily pursued, just as easily ignored. I'm largely indifferent to them mechanically, but the prominence they earn shiny Pokemon textures PLA's isolation. The game is mostly enjoyed alone, and the social interaction comes from sharing your exciting and unique experiences with the world. It's unconventional, but extremely clever. Hisui can't facilitate a vast population of players, so PLA lets people interact intangibly between worlds. Something space-time distortions. Good job, PLA Continuity Department. Somewhat ubiquitously, the first shiny I found on this playthrough happened on a later revisit to the Coastlands, and even more so, Drifblim was my main account's first shiny too. Thankfully, neither encounters were at high enough levels to know self-destruct, but PLA retains shiny spawns upon reload, so the heart palpitations would subside eventually. On paper, you'd think having infinite reloads would cheapen the experience, and yeah, it does. It's odd that the optimal response to finding a shiny is in the menu. I think PLA knows this, but it bends the knee so as to not incur rage quits in burgeoning shiny hunters. It doesn't make game design sense, but it's benevolent, and remember, PLA desperately wants you shiny hunting. I won't pretend I'm above this. Every gripe with the catching system is amplified tenfold on a shiny target, and I would feel 10 times more swindled to fail one. I'll take a band-aid solution over an open wound. Regardless, finding a gold shiny is always an awesome moment. Collecting lost satchels is about as simple as possible. You find, or realistically place a pin on, the satchel indicator on your map, beeline to it, and press A. Then you go into the menu to redeem your randomly assigned merit points. That's true for online mode too, but generosity is its own reward, and getting your lost items back isn't half bad either. It's the most straightforward of PLA's attempts at meta-contextual social connection, and by extension the most effective. Unfortunately, that banks on an NSO subscription. Offline mode is tedious, uncanny, and hilariously shallow. Richie must have been on a fucking tear. It feels like someone noticed the catch-22 about 15 minutes before the deadline. Even so, the added replayability of a regenerating collectible shouldn't be undersold. Satchels are, well, not fun, they're just scavenger hunts without the hunts, but numbly therapeutic in a brutal world. PLA doesn't not want you to play online, per se, but crucially, it doesn't want you to have to. Right, where were we? Unlocking Basculegion opens up a secondary, streamlined route to each of the Gen 4 starters. The Turtwig Gauntlet is bypassed with a river crossing, and Piplup is on a beach, so, you know. This is a brilliant reuse of space, and it's technically true for Chimchar, but in a roundabout, unsatisfying way. Its home is the remote Ramanas Island, with a rare but standard spawn in the mainland subregion Deertrack Heights. The southern strip of the Heartwood has the workings of a Turtwig-esque gauntlet, which could connect to Ramanas by sandbar, and there exists an intermediary island between Ramanas and the mainland with no actual purpose, but I guess they just couldn't make it work. This also makes not just Chimchar, but also its evolution Monferno available pre-cleaver with minimal exploration, which is laughably undeserved. Grotle and Prinplup also technically spawn alongside their pre-evolutions, but that's just a cherry on top of a complete experience. Chimchar also has a scripted encounter via Request 20, which I'm warmer on. Given their history of absence, casual players might need confirmation that the starters are out there, and that ephemerality also makes for an exciting request. On the opposite end of the ephemerality spectrum is the level 65 Alpha Infernape found on Ramanas Island. Where Gen 4's base form starters are rewards for exploration, its final stages are punishments, appearing exclusively as fixed alphas in unwelcoming territory. Torterra appears in the Mireland's own waterlocked challenge area, the home of trials, while Empoleon stands guard for the nearby Piplup on Islespy Shore. None of these are encounterable before their pre-evolutions, letting the wonder of discovery build up before transmogrifying it into terror. It's a woefully rare example of PLA accommodating both battle and exploration-minded players. Explorers want the first forms for the dex entries, and combatants want the final forms for team building or level grinding. Honestly, PLA probably just couldn't resist the opportunity to traumatize its players with a wild Alpha Infernape. One of PLA's many small pleasures is your first time seeing Pokemon fight on water using little life rafts. That levitating Basculegion primed me for the worst, but this is a perfect and perfectly silly solution to let landfaring Pokemon take on seafaring foes. In the southwest corner of the Fieldlands is Sandgem Flats, a sprawling, predominantly psychic-type area where everything kills you. It's been available from the beginning, but the level 50 Alpha Snorlax at the choke point would require some top-tier finessing to get past without Basculegion. Or weirder, I guess. I like that it's technically open, though. The Alpha Rapidash was terrifying, but it wasn't guarding anything, so there were no strings attached to surrendering. Even 35 levels later, I lost my entire team trying to catch this Snorlax. I guess I used up my catching mono normal fixed alphas I have no business catching juice with Ambipom. When you lose all of your Pokemon, the battle ends and you become the target. We've established that wild Pokemon are never mortal threats, everything is ignorable, but you instinctively enter panic mode, panic warp to a camp, sleep it off, and move on. I think Sandgem Flats is the epitome of PLA's philosophy on exploration. On first parse, it's clearly a bonus area, a reward for diehards, a place in the world untethered from your journey. I was at liberty to confidently ignore it and move on. But I'm here now, and I'll be here again. It's Mr. Mime's only natural spawn location. It holds a wisp I need to catch Spiritomb. It's the entryway to Lake Verity. Over the course of a playthrough, every inch of Hisui will be explored without ever having to puppeteer the player anywhere. When done right, this approach counterintuitively outpaces even strict linearity in mileage per square unit. Of course, PLA does it right. It's a bit deceitful, particularly once you catch on, but it's a brilliant application of resources and it lets players truly master Hisui. Doing outbreaks saps your Pokeball reserves, so I encircled the Fieldlands for Tumblestones. Ignore the Mime Jr., I thought it was a friendship evolution. The Fieldlands outskirts are surprisingly charitable for tumblestone grinding, taking you past cliff edges for regular tumblestones, through Orboro Tunnel for black tumblestones, and even to Ramanas Island for sky tumblestones. I'd bet it's intentional. It's so discreet that I can't be sure, but either way, it graciously expedites an otherwise tedious process. Orboro Tunnel is a neat locale, preceding the Sinonian digging site Orboro City. I love that it's spelled differently here. The etymology nerd in me gets excited thinking about how the term evolved, but the Pokemon nerd in me is writing this video, so I'll go put the etymology nerd in the corner until the inevitable 15-hour Scrabble video. After a few more fruitless outbreaks, Laventon wake-up slaps me with the survey rank that gates the final area, the Alabaster Icelands. I hightail it through Silene's office and back out to Firespit Island to salvage whatever balance is left, and I'm relieved to find that the Magmar here are still annoying as hell. There's no cover from their absurd detection radius, basically no chance of catching one, and only 2 other spawns, the equally annoying Graveler and the annoyingly rare Magby. Firespit Island is disappointingly bare bones for being Hisui's only real fire-type locale. The lava pools aren't even interactable, nor the air above them. No matter how many corners you cut, there's no reason for these lava pools to impede me from flying over the island. Beyond simply folding the walls into pyramids, my instinct is that these would have been less weird as water reskins. Make a lava-faring Chi-Yu mount as DLC, I don't know. Hey, are the misfortunes supposed to be intimidating? The game deliberately portrays them as dumbasses. They tried to evolve the wrong Growlithe the wrong way, Clover is humiliated for sending out a Christmas tree beneath an active volcano, and Charm apparently moved to Hisui from Kanto for work. What? This could only refer to the Galaxy team, which they were all in, but Clover was also in the Diamond Clan, and Coin was also in the Pearl Clan? Clearly PLA doesn't care about them as characters, so it draws a backstory from a hat every time they show up. They're just obstacles, they don't contribute anything thematically. They challenge you back to back with their collective 4 Pokemon, you win. Clover threatens to heal up their Pokemon forever, which is a funny acknowledgement on PLA's part, and a whole conga line materializes to interrupt their scheme. Apparently the thalassophobic fire-rock type Growlithe swam all the way here to protect his brother, which is a nice sentiment, but it obviously didn't do that. No explanation is given for Iscan, Polina, the Misfortunes, or the other Growlithe. Home run for the plot department. Ooh, look, cutscene visuals. Having finally faced its fears, Growlithe evolves into Hisui and Arcanine. Gorgeous design, by the way. And then gets struck by that weird rift lightning. Doesn't sound so impactful when I say it like that. It's a little Deus Ex Machina-y in execution, but it had to be frenzied somehow, and it's a genuine feel-good moment. Oop, back to gameplay visuals. Irida completes the conga line and makes conversation about soothing bombs while Arcanine canonically writhes in pain. This lackadaisy pacing does give players some time to prepare, but if you didn't come to this active volcano prepared, that's kinda on you. I guess I can't fault the game though. I took this pause in the action to get up and pet my dog. The Arcanine fight is a heartwarming full-circle moment, involving us in Polina's journey for the first time and demonstrating her partner's newfound bravery through gameplay. I do wish it leaned less on spectacle. Between predictable attack patterns and an egregious fire-rock typing, Arcanine's power level doesn't complement the narrative. The only real danger is getting cornered by the slapdash invisible lava walls. Thankfully, the ensuing cutscenes are some of PLA's most affecting. For one, we aren't visibly shocked to be holding the flame plate, making it seem at least earnest. More importantly, Polina says goodbye to her cherished Arcanine so he can become the new Lord of the Isle, solemnly accepting that she's going to be alone again. In her contemplation, she looks to the sky and, from the mouth of the volcano, sees the past Lord watching over them. The cinematography here, with the Lord disappearing as the camera pans past Polina, is the cherry on top of a beautiful scene and the perfect capstone to this tale of isolation. Time and time again, the characters feel hopelessly alone, like the world has left them behind. Polina is outcasted for her refusal to train Growlithe. Growlithe's world was thrown upside down by his father's sacrifice and the weight of his newfound responsibility. Iscan succumbed to his fears, only leaving his solitary tent when absolutely necessary. But even when their worlds seem totally abandoned, people from other worlds find ways to make a difference. Polina still has Growlithe. Growlithe still has Polina. Iscan and Polina managed to find genuine human connection in a desolate, empty place. And, perhaps most fittingly, once the new lord assumes his seat, he is accompanied by the ghost of his father, crossing over from another world to keep him safe. We bookend with another conversation with Irida, who forgives Polina and questions her own leadership. It's pretty trite. It shouldn't take this much contemplation for her to realize that she should protect Hisui. That was already her goal. Regardless, it's time for us to head home and move on. I briefly wander for wisps to bask in the open air, ignoring that spiel I just did. Surely nobody's watching me from beyond though, so it's fine. I trek up Veilstone Cape one last time, only to find the Lord's grave abandoned and Polina nowhere to be found. I wonder what Iscan's doing right now. You've seen the formalities already. I report to Kamado, he says he can't trust me, we eat potato mochi, I wake up, he trusts me, I get halfway through a sentence, smash cut. I do appreciate these scenes, and the dialogue has only gotten better and more humanizing as the characters come into their own, but I wish PLA wasn't so anxious about starting its next main quest directly after wrapping the last one up. A reprieve from that stupid guiding marker would be dandy. Weirdly enough, Ingo from Black and White is tasked with informing you of your next mission. Ingo from Black and White. Why is nobody on his ass about being a time traveler? Double standards, man. Up next on the quelling block is a Hisuian Electrode, Lord of the Hollow. Remember how I praised Adaman for being a gender-inclusive tyrannical leader? Well, I take it back. Electrode is a genderless Pokemon and is nonetheless ascribed the masculine title Lord. Just call it Liege or something, it's not that hard. Speaking of gender, here comes Melly. PLA is noticeably hush-hush about Melly's gender. The characters take pains to use genderless terms all throughout this scene. Melly uses he, him, by the way. Take this as proof that Game Freak is trying to turn everyone gay on purpose. Melly is being a piss baby about his clan enlisting my help, so Adaman proves my worth with a Leafeon I'm 5 levels above and some Eevee I'm up 22 on. Dude is just here for the love of the game. I'm supposed to win this, and it still felt way too easy. Melly's right to remain unconvinced. PLA throws you around for a while before formally introducing Ingo at the training grounds, then disappearing him before he can explain why. I guess we'll find out. Don't let Ingo's sense of direction fool you. If the Mirelands was where the game stopped holding your hand, the Highlands is where the game takes your hand and launches you out into the wilderness. Hello! That was Chapter 3 of Deconstructing Pokémon Legends Arceus, the video essay I've been working on for like 2 years now. Sorry to everyone I made wait for this chapter, it's been a long time. From now I'm working basically non-stop on this thing. We're gonna get it out there. Chapter 4 should be coming hopefully pretty soon, it's not gonna be that bad. Chapter 4 is the Coronet Highlands and Making Sacrifices, I believe. After that, it's going to be coming out in large chunks. 5 and 6 coming together. 7 and 8 are both very long. And it's going to be all out, hopefully, pretty soon. So yeah, thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you as soon as possible. Thanks.